Hello, my name is Mike, and today I'll be presenting research and lab-based configuration stats for two critical services, IMAPS with Dovecats on Linux and DNS on both Windows Server and Bind9. The goal is not only to get these services listening on the correct ports for verification with Nmap, but also to apply at least three hardening strategies for each. Much of this information comes from RFC 8314, the Dovecat project documentation, Microsoft Learn, the Internet System Consortium, Bind Manual, and NIST SB 800 TAC 81R3, which is the federal guide for secure DNS deployment. Here's an overview of what I will be discussing today. I will begin with IMAPS, its purpose and configuration in Dovecat, followed by specific hardening recommendations. Then I'll shift to DNS, first explain the protocol itself, and then walking through Windows DNS Server and Linux Bind9 configuration and hardening strategies. Finally, I'll review verification method and wrap up with the key takeaways. IMAPS or IMAP over SSL/TLS runs on port 993 and ensures that email access is always encrypted. According to RFC 8314, unencrypted IMAP is not considered obsolete because it exposes credentials and email content. Using IMAPs means all communication between client and server are protected, which is critical since email is one of the most targeted systems for attackers. To enable IMAPs on Linux, we start by adding the Dovecat IMAP package, which provides the secure mail access functionality. Once installed, the configuration file for SSL needs to be updated so that encryption is required for all connection and modern protocol like TLS 1.2 or preferably TLS 1.5 are enforced. The Dovecat documentation also stresses the importance of pointing the server to a valid certificate and key, ideally signed by a trusted certificate authority rather than relying on self-signed certificates. Once these settings are in place, the service can be started and enabled so it runs automatically. A useful way to confirm that the configuration is active is by using Dovecat built-in commands to print the effective setting, which is especially valuable for lab verification and audit. Hardening IMAPs and Dovecat focuses on three main areas: authentication, encryption, and key management. We disable plaintext authentication to make sure credentials are never exposed without TLS. Next, we enable modern mechanisms like SCRAM/SHA 256, which provide much stronger protection than older methods. On the encryption side, we enforce TLS 1.2 or higher and restrict weak ciphers. Finally, we protect private key files with strict permission, since a compromised key undermines all other protections. Together, these steps align with Dovecat documentation and RFC guidance for securing mail access. Once configured, verification is essential. We scan the server to confirm port 993 is open, but we also want to test the quality of the connection. Using tools like OpenSSL, we can inspect the handshake to confirm that TLS 1.2 or 1.3 is in use and that the certificate is valid. Dovecat on diagnostic command provide a snapshot of the effective setting, which is valuable for both troubleshooting and compliance evidence. This combination of external and internal checks ensure the service is not just running, but running securely. DNS is the backbone of the name resolution, translating host names to IP addresses. It relies on both UDP and TCP port 53. Because of its visibility, it's also a high value target. According to NIST SP 800 Tag 81R3, risks like open recursion, zone transfer leaks, and amplification attacks are a major concern. For our lab, the objective is to configure DNS in standalone mode, not as a domain controller, with the service simply listening on port 53. In Windows Server, DNS is configured through the DNS server role. Installing the role and adding even a minimal zone brings the service online. The final step is ensuring the firewall allows DNS traffic on both TCP and UDP port 53. Once this is complete, we can verify with a port scan to confirm that the service is listening as expected. Securing DNS on Windows involves closing command attack vectors. First, disabling recursion prevents the server from being abused as an open resolver. Next, zone transfer should be restricted to authorized secondary servers or disabled entirely if not needed. DNSAT can be enabled to provide authenticity of responses, which is recommended in NIST guidelines. Finally, enabling query login helps detect misconfiguration or malicious activity. This measure transforms a functional DNS service into a hardened one. On Linux, we configure DNS using bind9. Installation and the clean configuration file validate by name checkconf are enough to bring the service up. Once started, the server listens on port 53 for both TCP and UDP queries. For our lab, this minimal setup is sufficient and the focus is on demonstrating secure operation rather than hosting complex zones. Hardening bind begin with disciplined recursion if the server is authoritative only, which prevent abuse and reflection attacks. Access control lists, or ACLs, define exactly who can query the server or request zone transfers. Response rate limiting help mitigate amplification attempts by throttling repeated queries. Finally, implementing DNSAT as recommended by NIST adds cryptographic integrity to DNS responses. Each of these steps reduces the potential attack surface while maintaining necessary functionality. Verification proves a configuration is not only active but secure. Using IMAP, we check UDP and TCP port 53 to confirm DNS is listening, and port 993 for IMAPS. OpenSSL test can confirm encryption strength for IMAPS, while name checkconf provides assurance that the bind configuration is valid. On Windows, DNS login and the event viewer provide additional evidence. These steps help ensure we aren't just assuming the system is secure. We confirm it. The main message is that configuration is the only first steps. Verification and hardening complete the process. IMAPS protect email by enforcing TLS and modern authentication. Windows DNS should be carefully restricted to avoid recursion and unauthorized transfers. Bind should be locked down with ACLs, recursion control, and RRL. Across both services, NIST guidance stresses the importance of consistent verification and ongoing management. Security is not a one-time setup, it's a cycle of configured, verify, and maintain. These references bring together RFC standards, vendor documentation, and NIST guidelines. RFC 8314 defines secure mail access. Dovecot documentation outline implementation. Microsoft Learn provides Windows-specific DNS guidance. ISC covers bind, and this SP 800 TAC R81R3 provides a framework for secure DNS deployment. Together, they ensure our work is both technically sound and grounded in best practice. Thank you.